Hi, my friends. Welcome. We are here today with another story, and I'm going to touch on a story out of the burn unit. You're going to get a chuckle out of this one. It's not going to be the dark, this is what happened to me, that it generally is. I want to share with you one of the very funny stories that comes out of this and prepare you for a couple of the things that are coming down the pike. So if you would, please subscribe to the channel. We're up to 38 subscribers. Woohoo! In just 2 weeks. I'm pretty happy with that. We have a ton of views. We have well over 150 views on the most popular video. And so we have a lot of you that have not hit the subscribe button, so please do. If you would, also like the videos that you're watching and let them run. That changes the algorithm that YouTube uses, and it gets me higher up on the response list. If you would also leave us a message, that also helps the algorithm, and also hit the notifications bell so you know when we come back. Coming up very soon is Carolyn and Sonny Fuller's video. That's Debbie's sister and our brother-in-law. It's a wonderful story about how Christ brought Sonny to himself, and we just are excited about sharing that. We're having a little problem with the editing on that, so it's coming very soon. And also some stories from Debbie and I, which we will be recording tomorrow. Actually, the day that this comes out, we'll be recording those videos, and so stay tuned for that. I want to share with you today a story about Ray. Ray was a nurse there at the hospital that was extremely committed and an awesome guy. He was the one that you wanted for your best friend. He didn't have a real big sense of humor, which made him really easy to pick on. And I want to share with you today a story of how we kind of harassed Ray a little bit. And it wasn't too long before I left, but Ray was always a great guy, and he would come in and sit in my room, and we would talk back and forth after this little incident that I'm sharing with you, and it was always good. I actually really miss Ray, and I miss most of the nurses there. There was 2 Steves, there was a Phil, there was a Cindy, there was 2 Barbs, there was many nurses that we really made some good friends with. Ray was a guy that was, again, like most of these nurses, these people were young people. If they were 30, they were old. They were in school, they were in college. Ray had been to Vietnam already. He was a medic in Vietnam. I would love to be able to sit down with Ray, who was probably about 10 years older than me, and could very well still be around. Maybe he'll run across this channel. Ray was a wonderful guy. Like I say, he had been in Vietnam. He came back. He was taking some nurses training. And I think Ray was going to go a long ways because Ray was really an intelligent person. I met Ray one day when he came in with Steve, one of the Steves, to take me into the tubbing. We got back into the tubbing, and they were running the tub room, and when Steve and Ray were running the tub room, it was a circus. People were laughing and joking. Most of the time they were fairly decent jokes, but again, this was a dark place. And so we just were having a good time. They were getting the bandages off of me. Life was going pretty good. I was at least going along with the jokes. You have to understand I was depressed a lot of the time that I was in the burn unit, but things were going pretty good. And this was one of the better times. Well, they had got the bandages off. They got me in and out of the tub, and I was on a gurney that they moved me from there where they take off the ugly stuff they can't put back on. And they took me over to the other side where they were going to rebandage me up. Now, rebandaging me up was a process, especially since they had to bandage everything from my ankles all the way up to my chin. So they would wrap me in fine gauze, and that was first done on my legs, and they would work their way up. Then they would do both my arms. Then they would do my hands. And then they would take scissors and flat pieces and make me a shirt that they would put on. And this fine gauze was all soaked in silver solution. Then they would take a coarse gauze that was soaked in silver solution, and they would wrap me again. And every wrap would get cut off, and a wrap, and get cut off, and a wrap, and get cut off. Then they would take, and they would do the same thing on my chest. They would make me another layer to the shirt and on my back. Then they would take a coarse gauze again that's dry, and they would wrap me in one piece like you would see a mummy on TV. So they would wrap me up. Then they would take a piece of thick gauze, almost like a jean material, and they would make a shirt for my chest and for my back. And they would sew those together with something on the sides. And that was the process. So to go in for a tubbing was probably about an hour to an hour and a half process. Well, they were just beginning to wrap me up when Steve says to me, he says, "Hey, Tim, you got any of those turtles?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know if I've got any extra ones." I said, I think I might have one or two. And he said, "Boy, I've really got a taste for a turtle." I said, "Boy, Steve, I don't know that I've got one." And so we bantered back and forth like this 2 or 3 times, and he threatened to cut my leg with the scissors, and he threatened all this crazy stuff. And Ray is just listening, and he's trying to figure out what we're talking about when we're talking about these turtles. Now, if you remember turtles, so everybody knows what we're talking about, turtles was a candy that was about the size of a silver dollar. And it had caramel inside, and then it had a crunchy side, then it had crunchiness, which was supposed to be the turtle shell. And then it had nuts where the legs and the head would stick out, and then it was all covered in chocolate. And it was a chocolate-covered turtle. Well, Ray is just trying to figure out what we're talking about. Now, remember, Ray is a realist. Ray takes everything as exactly what you're talking about. So Ray says to Steve, "What are you guys eating?" Well, Steve had been baiting him, and Steve comes up, and Steve says, "Oh," he says, "they're turtles." He said they're turtles, and he says, Tim keeps a supply of chocolate-covered turtles in his room. You really got to find out where that supply is." And Ray says, "What's a turtle?" And Steve said, "Oh, come on, Ray. You've been all around the world. You've been to Vietnam. You know what a turtle is. A turtle is it's like meat inside a crunchy shell." And he said they take these little baby turtles and they cover them in chocolate. Well, by now we know we've got Ray starting to really percolate on this stuff. And so Ray says, "Nah, you guys are pulling my leg. You guys aren't eating turtles." And Steve says, "Well, what about it, Tim? Isn't that what they are?" I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "My dad brings them in." I said, "My dad's an excavating contractor, and he brings turtles, and Mom covers them in chocolate, and we eat these turtles." And Ray says, "Well, what do they taste like?" And I said, "Well, they got this kind of soft inside, and they've got this crunchiness right around that, and then they're covered in chocolate." And Ray says, "I don't think so." And "Oh, yeah. I said, the crunchiness," I said, "sometimes you get the shells that are a little bit too crunchy, and so you got to have a little extra chocolate, whatever it is." But I said, they're just great turtles covered in chocolate. I mean, I said, what else can you even want but a turtle covered in chocolate? And He says, I don't know. And I said, well, when we get back to my room, I said, I've got a couple. Steve always steals one or two. And I said, I'll give you one. You could try it. And Ray he just was not quite sure that that's what he wanted to do, was to eat that turtle. Well, we got back to the room and they got me in my bed and they got me set up, and which was, again, a big ordeal for somebody that was burned as bad as I was. And Steve says, well, what about it, Tim? You got one of those turtles? And I said, yeah. I said, I do. But I said, you can only have one if Ray wants one. And Ray said, I'm not sure I want one. What are they made out of again? I said, well, they're a turtle. They're just a baby turtle covered in chocolate. I don't think I want one of them. And Steve said, oh, come on, Ray, you gotta try a turtle. And we went back and forth for a few more minutes, and the short of the long of it was, finally Ray took one and he looked at it and he saw how much it really did look like a little turtle. And so he took a little bite off of it, and it didn't taste too bad. Well, that kind of tasted like a nut sticking out there where that leg was supposed to be. And he took another bite of it and he said, you guys really had me going. And we laughed about it. And so for the next, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 weeks before I got out, every day we would just harass and harass and harass good old Ray, because he had got so sucked into what that was. And folks, we don't know how much we affect other people's lives. It has been 50 years ago this summer that I was in the burn unit. Guys like Ray and Steve and the other Steve and the nurses. The head nurse was Rudy during the afternoon. He pretty well ran the place. Last I knew, which was 15 years ago, he was still there and still around the burn unit. These people were the working people of the burn unit. The doctors would come in and the doctors would make life and death decisions, and they carried a lot of weight. But the nurses were the ones that were there when you were hurting. They were there when they were trying to get you up to walk. They were the ones there to change the IV bottles, to take care of us when we had personal needs. They were the ones that cried with the patient and laughed with the patient. And I could tell you story after story after story after story of how the nurses came through and how the nurses took care of people. It's those people that make a difference. My friend, if you are in somebody else's life and they are in need, please be attentive to that. Please be open to that. Enjoy the time. Don't look at it as drudgery. Ray never held it against us that we picked on him so bad. In fact, Ray ate turtles right along with all the rest of the nurses, and they were constantly coming in. I've always been kind of a hoarder, and I think I got that a lot from my parents. We had a whole stash. We had a whole little basket full of sugar and salt and pepper and just all different sorts of things. We kept the tops to the plates that were plastic. They would throw them away. We'd keep them. We used those for 20 years after I got out of the burn unit. So I hope you've enjoyed this little story. Ray was a great guy. Thank you to the nurses. If somebody, any kind of nurse, thank you for what you do every day, day in and day out. You are the cream of the crop when it comes to taking care of anybody in need. Thank you so much for that. I just again want to encourage you to share this video. Please subscribe to our channel. Come back on Friday. I believe we should have Sonny and Carolyn started on Friday, or we'll have one from Debbie and I, which we will be producing today as you're watching this video. Please enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed the little story about Ray. We'll be back again soon, and we'll share some more stories about the burn unit, the experiences, and everything else that has went on. We'll come and share those with you, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you. Please subscribe, like it, and share it. We love you. God bless.